So summarize what we were talking about, which was on a low level. Oh, sorry, let me turn the light on properly. On a low level, we are discussing whether or not it is obligatory, to make ghusl on Jummah. Okay, is it obligatory or is it sunnah? Right. Um, so that's one thing. Okay. On a bigger level, we're dealing with something really important, which is I read a verse of the Quran or multiple verses of the Quran, or I read a hadith or multiple hadiths, and the outward purport, the zahir, what appears to me when I first read this is X. It's obvious. It says something, that's what it means. And then lo and behold, I find 99.9% of the ulama saying the opposite. I'm like, what's going on? What's going on here? They must not know what I know, and they must be wrong. Right? That's the conclusion. And then you realize, maybe I don't know what they know. So maybe I need to research more. So we saw something like 3 hadith that mentioned, make sure you do ghusl on Jummah, etc., etc., etc. And then قال محمد الغسل أفضل يوم الجمعة وليس بواجب وفي هذا آثار كثيرة. And then lo and behold, Imam Muhammad, because he's an Imam, someone we follow, and not because he is Imam Muhammad, but because he shows us what's going on. He says there are many, many ahadith regarding this. Okay? That it is not obligatory to make wudu, to make ghusl on Jumu'ah. You do not have to do that, despite what we've already read and despite with the outward report, right? And so that means then sometimes we read things and they're actually not to be understood in the outward way, in the most obvious way, but in the least obvious way. So this is what we call al-mu'awwal bit-ta'wil, or al-zahir bit-ta'wil, afwan. It's now more apparent and more likely by virtue of other evidence. Okay? I'll just give an example of that in physics, right? If I ask somebody about the speed of anything, and I say, do you or do you not believe and know as a 100% fact that speed is relative? Like, well, what do you mean by relative? So, well, if I was driving after you at 100 miles an hour, and you were driving towards me at 100 miles an hour, what is the relative speed? So, well, I guess if we hit into each other, it'd be, I guess, 200 miles an hour, right? Okay, fine. So what if I was driving towards you and you were driving away from me? And I'm going 100 and you're going 100. Okay, well then relative speed is 0, right? That's called relative speed. So then lo and behold, the speed of light is not relative. It's like, nah, that's impossible. It's impossible. Crazy. That's crazy. What are you talking about? And then, well, look at it. There's things you didn't know, and then they found out the speed of light is it's not relative. That's crazy. That's mind-boggling. Yeah. Alhamdulillah, you're a slave of Allah and you don't know everything. And you learn things every day. And things that you seem just obvious the case, it's not the case. It happens. SubhanAllah. There we go. So the same thing with hadith, with Quran, anything. You read like, oh, I must say this. It has to be this. Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. You know, you all seen those teacups. Calm down and have a cuppa, right? Calm down and have a cup of tea, right? Just calm down and read a bit more. Keep reading, keep reading, keep reading, and you realize, oh, there's other ways I can read this ayah. There's other ways I can read this hadith. There's other hadith that I haven't read, right? One of the Salaf, they arguing with somebody and they said, hey, do you know all the hadiths? He's like, no. Do you know half of all hadiths? Like, no. Do you know a third of all hadiths? Like, no. Okay, so why are you so confident? Right? So I'm not saying it's unknown, but I'm saying that the Imams, they do this, that they will do things that seem confusing to us, that they go against the hadith that we just read. They go against the ayah read, and they interpret it in a strange or confusing way, but based on evidence, because there's stronger evidence. So don't jump the gun, don't make assumptions, Don't be proud. Don't be arrogant. Listen. Just listen. Right? So he says there's many proofs of evidence, etc. So we'll start here inshallah ta'ala. So he says, قال محمد أخبرنا الربيع بن صبيح عن سعيد الرقاشي عن أنس بن مالك وعن عن أنس بن مالك وعن الحسن البصري. So it's kind of interesting. كلاهما يرفعه إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال من توضأ يوم الجمعة فبها ونعمت ومن اغتسل فالغسل أفضل. Muhammad said, Rabi' ibn Sabih informed us from Sa'id al-Raqashi that Anas ibn Malik, Sahabi, and Hassan al-Basri, Tabi'i. So Anas ibn Malik said the Prophet said it. And he's a Sahabi, so I trust him. Hassan al-Basri is not a Sahabi. Okay? So he quotes all sorts of sources. So I trust him, but I don't trust his sources. And he said the Prophet said. So I'm going to say I trust this part of, but I don't trust this. And by the fact that he's backed up by him, I don't have a problem with it. But if it was just Hassan al-Basri, then we say this hadith is mursal, and the marasil of Hassan al-Basri are not very good, right? Imam Malik, I don't think he doesn't quote Hassan al-Basri, right? I think at all, right? Because Hassan al-Basri is Basran, he's in Iraq, and Imam Malik's in, Medina, so it's kind of, I don't think he quotes Hassan al-Basri, right? So Hassan al-Basri is a faqih, he's an amazing scholar, he's a so amazing speaker and da'i, etc. But his sources are sometimes questionable. So the scholars, generally speaking, when he quotes the Prophet ﷺ without any source whatsoever, they are questioned. They're like it's almost like the Bible, right? Somebody quoting somebody, but you're like, you never met Jesus, so what is your source? I'm not saying you're a liar. I'm saying I don't know what your sources are for it, right? Both of them ascribing to the Prophet that he said, whoever does wudu on Jum'ah, that is well and good, and whoever does ghusl, that is know that is well and good. Alhamdulillah. Both are great. قال محمد أخبرنا محمد بن أبان بن صالح عن حماد عن إبراهيم النخعي قال سألته عن الغسل يوم الجمعة والغسل من الحجامة والغسل في العيدين قال إن اغتسلت فحسن وإن تركت فليس عليك فقلت له ألم يقل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من راح على الجمعة فليغتسل قال بلى ولكن ليس من الأمور الواجبة إنما هو كقوله تعالى وأشهدوا إذا تبايعتم فمن أشهد فقد أحسن ومن ترك فليس عليه وكقوله تعالى فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض فمن انتشر فلا بأس ومن جلس فلا بأس قال حماد لقد رأيت إبراهيم النخعي يأتي العيدين وما يغتسل. So this is fiqh, ladies and gentlemen. Right? Listen to these words. So Imam Muhammad, he's quoting with the chain transmission to Hamad ibn Abi Salama. Right? So this is Imam Muhammad's world of fuqaha and geniuses and people with introspection. Okay? The Hanafi world. Okay? Hamad, so Hanafi world is the world of Kufa. Okay? The world of geniuses, this world of this metropolis world. Right? So you have to understand the environment. Kufa is in Iraq. Iraq is a place of politics, intellectuals, money, conflict, power struggles, and the only and so situations like that create stars, right? And this is a very important thing to understand. Hassan, what is it? Ibn Khaldun, the great historian, he tells us that civilization and knowledge is created by in cities, bustling cities. Art comes from bustling cities. It does not come from the middle of nowhere, some desert or some island. Novels, literature, political ideas, right? Religious thought, complex ways of analyzing things, right? It doesn't come from a place like Medina. Because Medina, what you'll see is Medina was a focus in time of Sayyidina Umar, Sayyidina Bakr, Sayyidina Umar. It remained a focus for some time, but then basically by the time of Imam Malik on, it kind of dwindled. Like it wasn't the center anymore. Whereas Kufa was already a center in the beginning and remained a center for a long time. Politics, poetry, this, that. Medinan poetry, not really, doesn't really exist. Like what's coming out of Medina? Not much. Mecca, not much here and there. Oh, Damascus, very important. Politics, power, strife, sectarianism, this, that, and it creates things, right? So think about any cultural phenomenon. It always comes from a city. Think about any key book that's written in history. It comes out of a city. So civilization only comes out of civilization. And sacred knowledge or complex thought or complex analysis, so it comes from. And so that's why what happened then is over from the time of, let's say, from the time of the second century on, basically all knowledge is happening in big cities. Muslim Spain, Granada, Seville, Fustat in Egypt, Kufa, Basra, right? The two schools of Arabic grammar, Basra and Kufa. There was no Medinan school of Arabic grammar. If you went to study Arabic grammar in Medina, there's nobody talking about Arabic grammar. They just speak Arabic. That's it. But Arabic grammar is philology and philosophy of language and linguistics and grammar and metagrammar. It's all these things are happening. Where does that come from? That comes from a place of money and power, right? PayPal. Where's PayPal? Who knows where PayPal is? Amazon, Google. Where are all these places?
Silicon Valley.
Silicon Valley. It's not in Texas. Okay, Texas is booming, but it's not Illinois or something like that, or Texas or Mississippi, right? That's not where it's coming from, right? Even artistic, right? I'm not into music or anything, but you hear about, San Francisco jazz capital. It's like, well, why San Francisco? What's that connection between jazz and technology? Because civilization happens in big cities. Everything else is just slow and is a receiver of civilization. You're going to be a receiver of civilization. But these are things happening. Baghdad, wow, big place. Istanbul, big place, big ideas, conflict of power, conflict of interests, um, big political thought. That's where you're going to find intellectuals. That's where it happens. Intellectual is not born on the moon somewhere. It doesn't happen. Right? This person needs to travel to these places and be part of this and be part of that. Prague, right? What's it called? The Vienna Circle of Philosophy and Art. It's like, okay, Vienna, it's an important place. Things are happening there. Whereas tiny places, you don't get knowledge in tiny places. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. So you're going to see every key book. Okay, this is written in Medina, fine. But afterwards, after Imam Malik, basically Medina is just a place of barakah, not really a place of knowledge. Later on, at certain times, it does become a place of a hub, right? Because there's lots of things happening. But generally speaking, you're going to find where there is money and power, that's where civilization happens. That's where art comes from. That's where technology comes from. That's where civilization comes from. That's where the sacred knowledge comes from. It is preserved and discussed, etc. So here we're seeing this. It's a very different mind, the mind of Kufa, right? So let's read what Ibrahim Nakhai is saying. So Hamad ibn Abi Sulaiman from Ibrahim al-Nakhai. This is one of the key students of the circle of Abdullah Mas'ud in Kufa. Hamad asked him, he said, Sheikh, I have a question. Right? This is his learning process. I asked him about making ghusl on Jummah and doing ghusl after cupping and doing ghusl on the 2 days of Eid. He said, if you do ghusl, it's good, and if you don't, it's fine. It's like, how are you saying that, Sheikh? It doesn't make sense. How are you saying that? I said, did not the Messenger of Allah ﷺ say, whoever goes to Jummah, let him make ghusl? And let him is an obligation. That means you have to do it. So it doesn't make sense. Sheikh, I'm confused. What is the process that you are using? He said, yes, but it is not of the obligatory matters. What's he talking about? He's talking about something that will develop over time, which is called usul al-fiqh. He says, does a command always indicate obligation, or could it be used metaphorically? That's interesting. So what you're going to find out is now the student of Imam Muhammad, Imam Shafi'i, is going to start a whole science again. Where is he going to start it? He's going to start it in Iraq and in Egypt. Yes, he has experience in Mecca and Medina. He's going to go to Yemen. He's going to be governor then. He's going to go to where is he going to meet Imam Muhammad? In Baghdad. Baghdad is a bustling city. Different ideas, different things are happening. That's where knowledge is going to happen. And he's going to continue this in Egypt. Lots of people, conflict, challenges, arguments. That's where knowledge is going to come, right? That a group of people seeking something and fighting over that thing. So if it's over money, if it's over reaching the moon, if it's over finding out what Allah wants. So that's what the Islamic civilization was. You got a bunch of people and they're all fighting over each other in a healthy way most of the time over what does Allah want me to do, and that creates knowledge and creates sophistication of knowledge. So he's saying the question really here is, does every command indicate obligation? The answer is no. He said, he said, it is comparable, for example, to call witnesses when you trade. Doesn't Allah say that in the Quran? وَأَشْهِدُوا إِذَا تَبَايَعْتُمْ. Okay, is it wajib? Is it haram? Like if you buy and sell, you have to have a witness? Like if you didn't have a receipt, if you didn't have two people witnessing the transaction, is that haram? No. See, that's a command, but it's not obligatory. It just says whoever brings witnesses has done good. MashaAllah, it's a good thing to do. Avoid, give somebody a receipt. Make sure you have witnesses. That's good. But whoever leaves it carries no blame. And it is comparable to his saying, and then when the prayer is finished, spread through the earth. So Allah one says, on Jum'ah, stop buying and selling. When you finish Jum'ah, go and buy and sell. So is it obligatory to buy and sell on Jum'ah? Like, what if I don't have a job? Do I have to start buying and selling something? Like, I'm obliged to buy and sell something, like whatever it is, like a piece of paper? No. Okay, there we go. So therefore, so he's challenging him. He says, look, let's think about it. Is it true that every single time Allah or His Prophet tells us to do something, it's obligatory? Oh, right. And see how this is education as well. Education isn't I heard so and so said this, therefore it's true. Is there's a discussion. Sheikh, you're not making sense. Oh, what am I misunderstanding? The Sheikh's like, see, this is education. Education is the back and forward. Yeah, but Sheikh, what about this? What about that? Okay. That's education. That's how fiqh works. That's how Arabic works. That's how Aqidah works. That's how these things work, right? When there is a health debate, right? So often for us, the way that we interact with sacred knowledge is it's a lecture in that Sheikh said this, therefore I accept it. That's true. In the beginning, you have to listen for a while, right? You don't have basic things in your head. It's nice to listen, but that's not education. Education is, Sheikh, with all due respect, what you're saying doesn't make sense for these reasons. And I say, I'll explain why it does make sense. And you're like, yes, you've explained two of them, but the third still doesn't make sense. Like, good point. Let me research that. I'm like, oh man, this is that interaction. That's how sacred knowledge continues. If you don't have that, it doesn't exist. So somebody says, yeah, I studied with so and so. Really? You studied with so and so? You mean you debated with him? No, no, I didn't debate with him. Okay, but you didn't study with him then. You didn't study with him. You spoke to him. You heard him speak. You didn't debate with him. Right? When you debate with somebody, now we're talking. Now we're talking talaqqi. Notice Imam Muhammad, does he agree with every single thing that Imam Abu Hanifa say? No, he doesn't. Okay, then how is he his teacher then? Because they debated. Imam Shafi does not agree with every single thing Imam Malik says at all. But they debated, they bumped heads. That's knowledge, right? With adab, of course, right? But respect and love and reverence. But bumping head that's how it works. That's how knowledge continues. It does not work that's why YouTube, somebody's listening to this recording or yourself right now listening to the recording. This is not called education. This is called pre-education. Education is when we take this book apart together and it says this, but what about this? And what about this commentary? And what about that commentary? And what about this? And what about that? Well, how do I know that's true then? What is the principle here? Let's go to usul fiqh. Let's go to language. Let's go to this. Where's the translation? How shouldn't it be translated like that? Etc. 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 That's education, right? That's education. So whoever brings a witness has done best, and whoever leaves and is comparable to his saying, and then etc. Prayer. So whoever spreads forth, whoever goes and works is fine, and whoever doesn't is fine. So Hamad said, so he's saying, well, look, I can give you two examples where um, a command is for recommendation, and B, where a command is not even for recommendation. You don't even need to work on Jummah. It's just you can. You don't even have to, right? And then you're going to study in Usul al-Fiqh, 13 different usages of of a command, right? So I say, what about this in English? Is this a command? Believe? Is that a command? Is that an imperative verb? Believe?
Yes.
That's a command. Imperative. That's the grammatically that's called the imperative. Believe. So I say to you, Muhammad, believe you me. There is no country that I would like to visit more than Singapore. So is he now obliged to believe that? And he's a bad person if he doesn't believe it? Or that's just a turn of phrase? That's just how we speak, right? Believe you me, right? That's how we speak, right? That's not a command, right? Sometimes a command can be the opposite, right? When I'm like, I say something, for example, I say, you say, I park on Sayid's drive. And he's like, excuse me, sir, you parked on my drive. I say, sue me. Right? What does that mean?
Mm, I don't care.
That means I don't care. So that's not a command. I'm not telling him, Sayyid, your obligation before Allah is to take me to court. And if you don't do that, you're a bad person. It means, so it's like, see if I care, right? Sue me, right? Or see if I care. Are you obliged to find out if I care or not? That's not what it means. So the use of the command is all different things, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, "I'malu ma shi'tum," do whatever you want to do. Do whatever you want to do. It's like, huh? Does that mean that I can do whatever I want? So you told me don't steal, now I can steal. You said pray, and now I don't have to pray. What does Allah say after that? Innahu bima ta'maluna basir. He knows exactly what you're all doing. Right? That's how you'd say it, right? In American phrase. He knows exactly what you're all doing. He knows. So it's a threat, right? It doesn't mean do whatever you want. It means you go ahead and do whatever you want because if you do go ahead and do whatever you want, you're going to be punished because he can see exactly what you're doing. So it's not a command at all. It's actually a prohibition by way of threat. So it's the very opposite of a command, right? And so this is what this teacher is showing him, say, hey, let's look at what we call dalalat al-alfaz. Let's look at semantics here. That's a whole thing. So that's a whole science. We have grammar as part of language, that's a whole science. And then we have usul al-fiqh, which is another kind of linguistics, like what we call like uh what's the word? Hermeneutics, right? How dealing with this kind of stuff. So this is like deep understanding. So this is what we see is happening in this early. So Ibrahim an-Nakha'i, I think he passes away in the first century. So this discussion is happening within you know, within like decades of the Prophet ﷺ. It's like, how are we going to do this thing of understanding revelation? Because it's a lot of deep things are happening here. Hamad said, I saw Ibrahim and Nakha'i come to the two Eid prayers without doing ghusl. Right? So is this an ad hominem argument? Oh yeah, Ibrahim Nakha'i is a good guy. Ibrahim Nakha'i is a sheikh. He did this, therefore I'm going to do it. No. It's like Hamad said, this guy is amazing. Like his way of looking at revelation is very penetrating, it's deep, it's nuanced, it's powerful. He's like this amazing brain, an amazing person. And so yeah, if he goes against a hadith that I understand another way, not a problem, right? The nuance of things. Many times you're going to see that where I have a sheikh, he says something, I don't even understand what he's saying. Like he said something and it's too nuanced for me. Like I can't even understand it. I remember the words, but I don't understand what it means. And that's exactly what the Prophet said. The Prophet said, he said, may Allah make radiant the face of somebody who hears what I say and then conveys it to somebody else exactly as he heard it. Because it may well be that the person who is carrying a source of knowledge is carrying it to somebody who understands it better. Like I don't have that depth that you do. You're like, well, yeah, you can look at it this way, this way, this one. Subhanallah, right? And so this is a cumulative effect as well that we're seeing here. Okay, and it says, قال محمد أخبرنا محمد بن أبان عن ابن جريج عن عطاء بن رباح. And so he's now going to, this is now Medinan school. Sorry, Meccan school. Okay, this is Kufan school. He's saying, by the way, I've seen the Medinan school, Medina school, Meccan school as well. So we said that the Meccan school kind of died out, right? It kind of died out, but it also got kind of like absorbed, bits of pieces of it got absorbed into the other schools, right? And sometimes that can happen, right? So usually things branch out, right? So like the Medinan school kind of branched out into the Malikis and the Shafi'is and the Hanbalis to some extent, right? To some extent, right? But sometimes things can merge, right? Like US law. US law is a merge of European law and UK law. So what's it called? So what we call common law of the UK and civil law of Europe. And so like American, they kind of like merged them. It's not another branch of those things, but it's a merging. Same thing happened in Arabic grammar. So I mentioned, for example, we had the early Kufans and Basrans. 500 years, they kind of like had their own systems, and then basically bit by bit, the Basrans kind of won, but it was a kind of like it became one amalgam, right? It can happen like that. But usually the way that the human mind and civilization works is that we spread out into more and more and more specializations and branches of things. Protestantism, right? 50,000 different types of Protestantism, right? Spreads out from that one thing. That's the normal way that humans function, right? Branches of other things. The Shafi'is, they broke into two camps, the Khurasaniyin and the Iraqiyin, right? So you've got Medinan that breaks into three, and then the Shafis were broken into two, and then they actually came together again, but they work on like two things for a while. Okay, so he's tapping in here into the Meccan school, right? And he's saying, Muhammad said, Muhammad ibn Aban informed us from Ibn Jurayj, from Ata ibn Rabah, who said, we were sitting with Abdullah ibn Abbas and the prayer time for Jummah arrived. So he called for water and did wudu. Some of his companions asked, why do you not do ghusl? He said, it is a cold day. So he had done wudu, right? Some excuse, right? And then we learned from this that it is sunnah to leave a sunnah for a greater sunnah. And it is obligatory to leave a sunnah for an obligation. So either it's very cold and I genuinely fear harm to myself, in which case I should not do this thing because I genuinely fear harm and it's going to be haram for me to make ghusl. Okay? Or I'm not sure, I should look after my health. And so it's better, it's not haram, but it's better for me not to do that. Right? So how is this applicable to us? It is 12 o'clock at night and you haven't prayed Isha yet. You're going to pray Isha. Then you're going to pray 2 rakats. Then you're going to pray 11 rakats of witr. What time are you going to go to sleep? Right? And you've got to go to work tomorrow morning. So, okay, we can ask the question, why are you going to sleep at 12 o'clock? But is it the best thing to do to pray your 2 rakats sunnahs after Isha and then another 11 rakats right now and then go to sleep at 1:30 and then pray tahajjud? So now you're going to wake up before Fajr as well. So you're going to wake up in 2 hours and pray tahajjud as well. Is that the best thing to do? Or sometimes is it sunnah to leave the sunnah? So sometimes it is sunnah to leave the sunnah. Because for other reasons, there's a greater sunnah. There's more other things that I'm impressed. Or it could be obligatory, like you have to work tomorrow morning. You better be awake at work, right? And so yes, obviously somebody who prays tahajjud, you have to sacrifice things. You have to live a slightly different life where you have sleep during the day a bit and these kind of things, etc. Right? But what I'm trying to say is there are certain times when you're saying, I'm not doing this because I'm lazy. I'm not just not doing the sunnah because it's lazy. Rather, I am missing the sunnah because Allah wants me to do another sunnah, namely eating with my family, namely going to sleep early because I kind of feel a headache coming on, right? So there's difference between my nafs doesn't want to do what Allah likes, which is bad. My ego doesn't want to do the best thing. That's wrong. As opposed to Allah doesn't want me to do this good thing, right? That's a very important point there. Muhammad ibn Aban informed us from Ibn Jurayj, from Ata ibn Rabah, who said, we were sitting with Abdullah ibn Abbas. Okay, we did that. قال محمد أخبرنا سلام بن سليم الحنفي عن منصور عن إبراهيم النخعي قال علقمة ابن قيس, right, the student of Abdullah Mas'ud, إذا سافر لم يصلي الضحى ولم يغتسل يوم الجمعة. Right, I'll give you another example of leaving a sunnah for a greater sunnah. On Arafah, when you're on Hajj, it is not sunnah to fast, despite the fact that fasting on Arafah is a huge thing, right? For us who are not on Hajj, it's super important. You basically have to do this. Like you can't not fast on Arafah. It's a huge thing. But when you're on Hajj, you don't pray tahajjud. You don't pray tahajjud, and you don't certain days, and you don't fast on Arafah. Because what's your priority? You have a lot of things to do this day. You're going to go from here to there, from there to there, right? I remember my brother, may Allah reward him, had a lot of wisdom, and some people have these kind of like innate wisdom. Once I was fasting, I was like 16 or 15, I don't know how it was. He said, Frida, you fasting? I was like, yeah. Sunnah fast. It's like, don't. I was like, why? You know, I was very kind of proud. I am, may Allah forgive me and save me from my kibr. You know, like just kind of arrogant, like, why? He said, because you're traveling, right? So yeah, but you should still fast when you're traveling because it's not a big deal. You're traveling with mama. Say, oh, she might need your help to carry stuff. She might need you to be sharp. She might need to have more energy. She might want to have a joke with you about something to calm her nerves. And you're fasting and you're not able to do that. It's like, oh, good point. Clever, right? This is fiqh, right? Some people, again, they pick up on these things so they're more, in tune with maybe common sense. But these are the things we see in the sunnah, that there is the sunnah, which is 100% dedication to the akhirah. I'm not doing what I want to do, I'm doing what Allah wants me to do. But the actual application of what Allah wants you to do varies from time to time and place to place, and it is balanced, right? So you don't do a balance between Allah and yourself, but rather your love of Allah is expressed in a balanced way. That's what he's doing, saying, I shouldn't. That's not a reasonable thing to do. I'm cold, I'm old, and I might get sick. Why would I do that? That's not a clever thing to do. Okay, then he said, so then he said, إذا سافر لم يصلي الضحى ولم يغتسل يوم الجمعة. He said that Salam ibn Sulaym al-Hanafi informed us from Mansur, from Ibrahim al-Nakhai, again, this Kufan school, who said Alqama, also in Kufa, when he traveled, he would not pray duha. So normally he's praying duha. Now he's not going to pray it. Yeah, I need to save energy for the journey. It's hard work. Priority is getting from A to B. Allah doesn't want me to die on the way, right? During the morning, nor ghusl on the day of Jum'ah. I'm not going to do it. Right? What you do, for example, as an individual and what you do as a family is not the same. So it's not sunnah to join prayers. Right? You can. You're traveling, but it's not sunnah. With your family now, let's make it easy. Or you with your teenage son, make it super easy. Right? Wow, that's so cool. Like when I'm traveling, I just pray 3 times a day. Pray Fajr, pray Maghrib and Asr, and oh great. And so now I go to this restaurant, chill out. Oh, the deen is so easy. It's like, alhamdulillah, that's what you wanted to do. Your aim was to make deen seem easy for this person. So that's very different to you're by yourself, hanging out in a hotel on a business trip, and you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna join so I can do what I want and just hang out. It's totally different. Right? So there's following your nafs as opposed to following wisdom. They're not the same thing. But following wisdom, sometimes it implies that you do less for the sake of Allah. And sometimes less ibadah is more. Right? Sometimes less ibadah is more. But that's not the default. May Allah forgive us and give us high himmah. قال محمد أخبرنا سفيان الثوري حدثنا. So Sufyan al-Thawri is like the equivalent of he's like the kind of like the what's the word? Like what's the word? Like the competitor or something like that, like of Imam Abu Hanifa. So these are like these two big Kufan scholars, Sufyan al-Thawri and Imam Abu Hanifa. Right? So the Thawri school existed for a while and then died out. So that's one thing, is things branch out, but also things die out. If they die out, if they're not cultivated. So Shafi fiqh might die out one day because nobody studies Shafi fiqh, nobody cares about Shafi fiqh, and just nobody knows it, and that's it. Maliki fiqh dies out, Hanafi fiqh dies out, and then there's no more deen. Right? So Imam Shafi said this about Layth ibn Sa'ad. So Layth ibn Sa'ad was the Imam Malik of Egypt, same time as Imam Malik. So Imam Shafi said, Layth ibn Sa'ad أفقه من Malik. He understands fiqh even more than Imam Malik. ولكن أصحابه ضيعوا علمه. He says, but his students, they didn't keep up the work. They didn't write down his fatwa. They didn't discuss them. They didn't share them. They didn't correct them. Right? Imam Abu Hanifa had Imam Muhammad to document, discuss, organize. Right? Imam Malik had Ibn Qasim and all sorts of students. Imam Shafi had Imam al-Muzani, he had Imam Buwaiti, he had people to follow him up with. Or who does Layth ibn Sa'ad have? Nobody. You just see a few quotes here and just died out. Sufyan al-Thawri, who were his students? I don't know. So it just dies out. So if a system is not used, it dies out. And you can't bring it back. So this is the death of knowledge. We're talking about the creation of knowledge. And then the death of knowledge is it's no longer used. Nobody's interested in that anymore. And this happens throughout the world. There was an article a long time ago, maybe 20 years ago, about the death of stone masonry. Right? Stone masonry, building things out of stone. Like, why would I do that? That's so expensive and slow. Why don't I use bricks? Why don't I use something else? So then it gets to a point that actually nobody could actually fix it. Like you had an old church or an old masjid. Nobody could actually know how to fix that thing in the same way that it was built. They couldn't do it. Pyramids. Why can't we build a pyramid? Oh yeah. I mean, we could look at it, but we're not part of that civilization. That civilization has died. And so we don't even know how on earth they made those pyramids. And we couldn't do it. So what happens if that happens with the deen? You don't study with somebody who studied with somebody who studied with somebody who studied with Imam Shafi. And yeah, just do the deen. How there was no such thing as deen without studying with somebody who studied without studying. Because look, Sufyan al-Thawri, where's his fiqh gone? Gone. It's disappeared. Disappeared. It doesn't exist anymore. Mujahid, the Medinans, the Meccans, where's their fiqh gone? Gone. There's nobody who say, yeah, I'm on this madhab of Ibn Abbas or the madhab of Mujahid. That doesn't exist. And so if we don't study fiqh with people who studied fiqh, with the imams, that knowledge will disappear and it will never come back again. And that's exactly what the Prophet ﷺ said. He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not take knowledge by simply plucking it away from people. Or rather, He takes knowledge by taking away the ulama. You're like, it's okay, the sheikh's there, like, just on YouTube. No. You did not have talaqqi. You didn't study with that sheikh, you didn't debate with that sheikh, you didn't show him your opinion and he corrected you and you saw how it was more nuanced or how it was this or how it was that. You didn't do that kind of stuff. And so what happens is your deen will disappear. And that's exactly what is happening right now. It is very difficult to find places where you can go and study Maliki fiqh. Like I'm going to go and study Maliki fiqh. I'm going to go and study Hanbali fiqh. I'm going to go and study Hanafi fiqh. And I'm going to do that. You'll be, for example, Hanafi fiqh is very easy. Lots of people teach Hanafi fiqh. But do they debate? Very few. Very few. You say, I studied with the sheikh, meaning you are one of 500 people in that classroom. That's not studying. That's hearing. Right? In like a lecture theater, right? They have the assistant, like they debate, what's it called? They have the professor, and then they have these kind of little kind of the person who comes and like talks to you about stuff, right? They helps you like discuss things. It has a word for it. I don't know what it is. That's knowledge. Without that, there's no knowledge. If Deen is just YouTube, like there's no knowledge anymore. There has to be discussion, back and forward, what's going on. That's how it keeps going. You'd be going connected back to these people. Otherwise, their knowledge dies. And you can just read about them and have an idea about them, but you don't know them. And their knowledge disappears. And that's how things work. And that's how it is working right now. عن ابن جريج عن عطاء بن أبي رباح قال كنا جلوسا okay, we did that one. قال محمد أخبرنا سلام ابن سليم الحنفي عن منصور we did that one. قال سفيان الثوري حتى منصور عن مجاهد قال من اغتسل يوم الجمعة بعد طلوع الفجر أجزأه عن غسل يوم الجمعة. So Muhammad says Sufyan al-Thawri informed us from Mansur. I believe this is Ibn al-Mu'tamir. We narrated us from Mujahid, who said, whoever does ghusl after. And so there's huge things that you could never know without this process. Because you read the books and you just understand 50% what's going on. And the rest of it is all there, but you just don't see it. So it's not like they're going to tell you something that doesn't exist, but they give you that, they open a door that is closed without it, right? Like Mr. Miyagi, right? What does Mr. Miyagi do with whatever his kid, the Karate Kid? Like, does he give him something that is supernatural? Does he give him something? It's just no, he just helps him find out himself, right? Wax on, wax off, etc. It says, whoever does ghusl after dawn on the day of Jumu'ah has done enough with respect to ghusl for the day of Jumu'ah. Right? I.e., imagine, for example, you made ghusl at Fajr for Jum'ah, and then you broke wudu. Then you haven't really done ghusl for Jum'ah, right? Because you just did ghusl on Jum'ah. So then when you come to Jum'ah, you're going to make wudu again, and that's not really ghusl for Jum'ah, right? So generally speaking, it's recommended to delay as much as possible, but the bare minimum is, as he mentions, is after Fajr. Now there's a weaker position in the Shafi school that says you can do it from midnight on. And I believe the Hanafis allow from Maghrib on, right? That basically on Maghrib on a Thursday, because the Maghrib on Thursday is Friday, right? So I believe they allow that. I'm not really sure. But in the Shafi school, the relied upon position is from Fajr, and a weaker position is from the middle of the night. So if you made ghusl for some reason after the middle of the night, you can intend ghusl, for example, let's say for janaba, and ghusl for what? For Jumu'ah as well. Whoever does ghusl after dawn on the day of Jumu'ah has done enough with respect to ghusl on the day of Jumu'ah. قال محمد أخبرنا عباد بن عوام أخبرنا يحيى بن سعيد الأنصاري. So this is the Qadi of Medina. And Amra. So this is Madani, right? Medina. And Amra. So this is the servant of Aisha. Okay. عن عائشة قالت كان الناس عمال أنفسهم. Now notice something else. We see the way that the Prophet ﷺ taught and the way that certain Sahaba taught, not all Sahaba, certain Sahaba, like Aisha radiallahu anha, like Ibn Abbas. They asked the question, why and how? So for example, the Prophet ﷺ, he was asked, he was said, one Sahabi comes to the Prophet ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, my mum has died and she made a vow to fast. Can I make it up for her? So the Prophet said, okay, what if your mum owed some money to somebody? Would you pay it off for her? So yeah, if my mum owed some money to somebody, I pay it off for her. And he says, the debt due to Allah has a better right to be paid. Oh yeah, that's clever. That makes sense. The Prophet was so teaching him how to think. It's like this is analogous. Like if there was a debt, you would pay it. A vow is a debt, so it's the same thing, or actually by better right. Prophet ﷺ was asked, Ya Rasulullah, if you kiss does it break the fast? He said, okay, let's think about it. If you put water in your mouth and spat it out, does it break your fast? He said, no. So there we go. So as long as you didn't swallow someone else's saliva, then it doesn't break your fast because same thing. Oh, good point. The Prophet is teaching us how to think. And certain Sahaba as well were like that. They got this fiqh. So Aisha radiallahu anha is arguably the greatest faqih after the Prophet ever. Ibn Hazm al-Andalusi, the great ulama of Spain, he said he wrote a list. It was not really a book. He just wrote a list of scholars of fiqh. Who did he put on the top? Number one. Who do you think?
Aisha?
Aisha radiallahu anha, number one, right? And she's particularly relevant in the Maliki school because where did she stay? She stayed in Medina, and her nephew is Urwa ibn Zubayr, who we're going to see throughout the Muwatta. Her another nephew, I guess, or is it a nephew or kind of like half nephew is Qasim ibn Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, right? So Sayyidina Abu Bakr married Asma bint Umais. So he had a son called Muhammad, half brother of Aisha, way later. And he was sent, and then he was raised by Sayyidina Ali. That Muhammad was raised by Sayyidina Ali, because when Sayyidina Abu Bakr passed away, she married Sayyidina Ali. Sayyidina Ali sent him to Egypt to be a governor for him. Sayyidina that Muhammad was killed in Egypt. And so his daughter, I can't remember her name, Hafsa or something like that. Her daughter and her son, Qasim, his daughter and son were sent to be protected in Egypt, in Medina, into the house of Aisha. So they were raised. This is her half brother's son, which is what's that called? I guess niece and nephew, right? Your half niece and nephew were raised by her. So they were in her house. So they got all her fiqh. And he's one of the fuqaha sab'a, one of the great seven fuqaha that Imam Malik based his fiqh on. Right? And there's others as well. I'm trying to think other sources from Aisha as well. So Aisha is very important, right? Obviously, being a wife of the Prophet ﷺ and being super intelligent, she quoted things that other people couldn't quote. Obviously, being intimate with the Prophet ﷺ, fiqh of those kind of things, and then she's just super intelligent, right? So she's a really sharp lady, right? And so she the number of her hadiths, I think they say about a third of all hadiths are from Aisha radiallahu anha, right? So it's very significant. She said, what is the reason for Jum'ah? What are you talking about ghusl? What is the point of ghusl? He says, people used to be their own workers, right? So she says, back in the day, right? So we see that right in the beginning of Islam, there was suddenly lots of jihad, and jihad led to slavery, right? There's all these now workers. And a lot of people are like, hey, I don't actually do manual labor anymore, right? Certain Muslims like, I don't have to do manual labor anymore. Some of her audience, they said, in our time, that didn't exist. Everybody's doing manual labor. Everybody's doing it. So when you go to the masjid, everybody is doing manual labor all the whole time. Okay, so they would go to Jummah in the state they were in. Okay, somebody who does manual labor, how do they smell? Right? And then it would be said to them, if only would do a ghusl. Come on, guys, let's cooperate a little bit. Can everybody just go and have a shower because it stinks? Right? Didn't the Prophet say about people who come to the masjid and wearing garlic? Didn't the Prophet not like this smell? So the legal reason is, hey, you, with all due respect, you stink. Right? It's a real thing. Like, this is worship. We're trying to focus. That is the legal reason. So that's why. So he notices how he summarizes it with logic. This is very much the Hanafi way. Where's the logic here, guys? Right? Where's the logic here? Notice before when they're talking about touching the private parts, he's quoting Ibn Abbas, who said, listen, what's the system? Wudu is for things that come out. Also, breaking your fast is for things that go in. So when you touch your private parts, what came out of you? Nothing. Why would it break your wudu? Like, where's the system, bro? Like, where's the logic? Right? Where's the system? That's very much the Hanafi way of doing things. What is the system? Right? And less so with the other schools. Okay, inshallah.
Ustaz, can I ask a question?
Like that, Muhammad. So by the way, no
Okay, so
one's allowed to become Hanafi. If anybody becomes Hanafi, problems. I'm gonna press charges. Sayyid, you're a Hanafi, correct? Sayyid Muzaffar,
yes, Sheikh.
you're Hanafi.
Yes.
Okay. We'll think about not letting you in next time. We'll see. No, I'm joking. We like everybody, but we just like some people more than others. No, I'm joking. I'm trying to be devil's advocate, right? I'm playing. I'm teaching, but I'm also acting, right? So you can see the different minds, right? The different ways of thinking, right? And so that's important. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Yeah, so the the arrangement of the hadith is different in Imam Malik's Muwatta. Is it?
Slightly different, yeah. Slightly different. So there's
Oh,
he will cut out certain hadiths. Maybe it's not so relevant, like it's not so no, it's not so central. And he doesn't what Imam Muhammad doesn't do because it's of no use to him whatsoever, is to quote the way of Medina. So if you look at Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi's narration, that's the most famous narration which came through Spain. Okay, that is a Maliki book, and it will say Hadith, Fatwa, Fatwa, Al-Amru Andana. What do we do in Medina? Because that is the way of the Malikis, what we do in Medina. So that's really important, right? So Dr. Omar Farouk, if you've heard of him, Dr. Omar Farouk, right? His PhD was on looking at the various quotes in the Muwatta about Al-Amru Andana, Al-Amru alladhi la khilafa fihi Andana, whatever different wordings that Imam Malik would use for the matter, what do we do in Medina, right? And that whole concept of what is Amal Medina, what does it mean? How important is it? What's going on there, right? And so he doesn't quote any of that. He doesn't do that. So clearly Imam Malik would have been saying things like that at certain times, right? But you might not find that in other works, like I have another narration of the Muwatta of Al-Qa'nabi. So Al-Qa'nabi is one of the shuyukh of Imam Bukhari, right? So if you imagine you're Imam Bukhari or you're reading Sahih Bukhari, Imam Bukhari is studying with one of the students of Imam Malik, and then the hadith goes to Imam Malik. So we have that book. So if you imagine that there's Imam Malik teaching, and he teaches lots of different people. One of those many, many people he's teaching is the teacher Imam Bukhari. And then Bukhari is selecting a hadith from that book to put in Bukhari. And so that one doesn't have things like that. It just has the hadith and that's it. And it'll be slightly different arrangements, different things, right? And so, Abu Dawood is the same thing. So Abu Dawood is a work in progress, right? We have like 4 or 5 different narrations of Abu Dawood from Abu Dawood. And there's differences. The hadiths are different, slightly different order, a tweak, a hadith that we cut out that maybe because they say that, for example, over time he was composing it, selecting it from different sources and refining it and showing it to Imam Ahmad. Allahu Alam. And so, so basically one of his earlier students might narrate it. He dictated the whole thing, and that was a first draft or the second draft. And now we're looking at the 10th draft. It's slightly different. So the Muwatta is something that was like a lesson. Like imagine if you say, for example, every single time Farid Dingle teaches Matin Abu Shuja', he mentions these points. It's going to be different, right? But generally it's Shafi fit, but it's not the same every single time I teach the same book. I don't bring up the same issues or the same comments the same every single time. But there is a general message. If you got the whole thing, you'd be like, this is what Farid Dingle is saying. Right? This is how he works. He believes in the form of dhahib. He believes in pluralism. He believes in studying with people. He believes in focusing on the heart. He believes in certain concepts. He believes in all sorts of kind of things, right? There's certain recurrent themes, but they're going to be quite different, right? Farid Dingle at 25 and at 45 or at 55 or at 95, Ya Rab, inshallah, if I'm still alive. It's not going to be the same message, Wallahu A'lam. And there's many, many, many hadith that Imam Malik narrates, but not in the Muwatta. That's an interesting thing, right? So clearly he's editing hadiths out. All those hadiths that you will find that are narrated by his teachers, but they're not in the Muwatta. So you know he was aware of them, but he didn't narrate it. That's interesting, right? So it'd be really interesting to just go through a hadith that Imam Malik only narrated outside of the Muwatta, right? Or a hadith that you would imagine should be in the Muwatta but aren't. It's very interesting. Like sometimes like it's almost strange the way it is. Like in the Maliki school, they have the qunut of Fajr, right? So you come out of the before you go into the ruku' of after the second rak'ah of Fajr, you do qunut. Imam Malik in the Muwatta just quotes Ibn Umar saying that Ibn Umar didn't do the qunut. That's it. So why did you say that? Like, why did you quote evidence against yourself? What was your message? How maybe Imam Malik had 2 week discussion on that, and we don't have that, maybe. Or maybe it's in a version of the Muwatta that we don't have, or it's only in a certain discussion, or I don't know. Right. Inshallah, that makes sense. Shall we stop here? وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحان الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك